The presenting sponsor of Andrew Talks to Chefs is Mies. Mies is the chef-created recipe operating system that makes your professional kitchen life easier with unprecedented tools for recording, scaling, analyzing, costing, and teaching recipes. Much of it at the press of a virtual button. Learn more at getmeez.com/Andrew. That's GETMeez.com/Andrew. This episode of Andrew Talks to Chefs is supported in part by S.Pellegrino Sparkling Natural Mineral Water. For the past 125 years, S.Pellegrino has supported the art of fine dining in all of its ever-changing forms and nurtured the next generation of chefs through resources and mentorship. To learn more, visit sanpellegrino.com.
I'm Massimo Bottura.
This is Amanda Cohen.
This is David Kinch.
This is Mike Anthony.
This is Hooni Kim.
This is Amanda Freitag.
This is Richard Blaze.
This is Paul Kahn.
This is Curtis Stone.
This is Stephen Harris.
This is Missy Robbins.
And you're listening to Andrew Talks to Chefs.
And I know when it finally crystallized, and I told the story before, it was during the Beard Awards, and a bunch of us would get together, like 12 of us the first year, to have a little dinner before going out to the parties. And I remember telling John Schaefer, who was the sous chef at Gramercy, it was springtime, get some baby lamb, I want morels, I want peas, roast the baby lamb, all different parts, just put it on a platter, bowl of peas, steamed butter, maybe some chives, morels, butter braised, bowl, that's it. And maybe we probably had some roasted ramps. I said, put those all out, families out. I want them on the table when I walk in. And I called them up and told them, okay, I'm coming, because I didn't want to wait around. Mm-hmm. And I walked in and saw that food on the table and said, that's it. Where can I get this? Where can I pay for this?
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. This is Andrew Talks to Chefs. I am your host, Andrew Friedman. And of course, that couple of minutes you just listened to was me talking to Tom Colicchio, the wonderful Tom Colicchio, about the 25th, I cannot believe it's been that long, the 25th anniversary of his landmark craft restaurant in New York City. That is the main focus of the show. The restaurant is turning 25 this spring. That occasion is being celebrated with a party in New York City that will have happened the night before this episode drops, actually just a few hours before this episode drops, around midnight. I wanted to have Tom on the show just to talk about this milestone, to talk about craft's impact as he sees it, as I see it. And of course, we get into some hot topics in the second half of the show, namely the Noma controversy, which is growing so quickly that in this conversation, which was only recorded 2 weeks ago, I allude to the fact that it was largely playing out on Instagram, but that I imagine there would be some serious media coverage soon. And of course, the day before I'm recording this introduction, there was just the first big article, I'm sure there will be more, in the New York Times that sourced 35 former employees of the restaurant. That's a huge number for an expose of this nature. I'm sure it will lead to other stories, but I don't want to get too much into that in this intro, because the main reason we are here today is to celebrate the occasion of Craft's 25th anniversary, and as I say, to contextualize it and make sense of its role in culinary history in New York and around the United States. I am very grateful to Tom for joining us here. This is the third time he has done so. The first was at a very successful live show we did in 2019 at the Bell House in Brooklyn, New York. And on that occasion, Tom got into the origin story of craft in great detail. So we don't get into that too granularly here. Can I say that? Granularly. That's how I wanted to say it. I can't say it any faster. But we don't get into the origin story in super detail here because we already did that once. I will link to that in the episode notes for today's show. I will also link to an article that Tom mentioned in which neither of us could recall the name of, an article about how the media is conditioning diners to focus almost exclusively on new restaurants to the detriment of older, more established restaurants. So I do link to that article as well in the show notes. And I don't think I need to say anything else before getting you over to it, so I'm going to get right to it. Here is my conversation recorded at our home away from home, Gage and Tollner in Brooklyn, New York, with Tom Colicchio. Here you go.
It's gonna take a prolonged arrangement of the senses to make some sense of this.
Tom, welcome back. Thanks
Thank
for joining us for your third visit here. We're going to talk about a few things, but the reason we're here is that as we sit here on Feb 24, we are on the brink of, I can't believe I'm saying this, but the 25th anniversary of the first craft restaurant.
Yeah.
I'm sure you remember it more vividly. I remember when that restaurant came around and debuted so vividly. That's a hard number for me to fathom. But before, and we'll air this right around the actual date, but before we get into specifics, when I just said that, you just, something came over you a little bit. Just what are your, if you were just going to free associate, what are your thoughts at this milestone?
It's funny. I don't think much about it, and it's flown by. I mean, I can't. I don't know where the years have gone. I mean, 25 years. But I'm really proud of the work that we've done there. I'm proud of the people that have come through the restaurant, both front and back of house, who have gone on to do some great things. And it was. If I go back to opening night, it was pretty funny because I made people forget that I didn't leave Gramercy to open Craft. I was at Gramercy for 2 years while Craft was open. The first night we opened up, I was on the pass at Gramercy.
Oh, wow.
It helped that the restaurant was around the corner.
Yes.
So I got things going at Craft, and I ran around the corner and expedited for probably 3 hours.
It's like a farce.
And I did it for a reason. I did it because I didn't want the team at Gramercy to think that I was leaving, that I was abandoning them. And so it was really important that opening night I was there. And then I ran back, of course, to go back to Craft. But also I had a great opening team at Craft, and I wasn't that concerned. With Marco, Kenora, and James Tracy and Jonathan Beno and Akhtar Nawab and Sisha Artuzar. These were all like opening team. Cameron Damasco. I mean,
all-star team.
Yeah, it's a great team.
Do you consider the fact that you had that mindset about the two restaurants and how your team at GT felt? I'll tell you why I asked. I wonder if you consider that an old school notion. I often tell the story because I think it's become, I just don't think it's how it is anymore. But people who were in Los Angeles in the early 80s talk about Wolfgang Puck when he went from just having Spago to having Spago and Chinois, which is still there.
Yeah.
But that he was like conflicted every night. Where do I go? And that he would make and those weren't across the street from each other.
No.
But he was, he would try to hit both places every night, in a city as sprawling as Los Angeles. Yeah. And it makes sense to me he felt that way now. I also have seen it change as you have. But do you feel like would you, even at that point in time, because this is, again, we're going back 25 years, but do you think that was an old school notion already?
I don't know if it was old school, but it was one of those things where there was really no model for growing restaurants. If you go back to the 80s, you had one restaurant, that was it. And the guys in France, they got a Michelin star, they opened up their bistro, their brasserie, but that was it. There was no empire building. And so I think that since there wasn't a plan, you just tried to figure it out. And because we all think that we're supermen and women, that we could do it all. So we can bounce around from one place to the other. But I just think that you tried to do whatever you could. And of course, you don't want to abandon your first child to go to the second. And so you think you can do both. And you try your best. And a lot of times, so many people have pulled it off, obviously. But I think the only way to do that is to actually trust your teams. Because if you have to micromanage them, if you think you're the only one who can do whatever it is that you're doing, then guess what? You're the only one who's going to do what you're doing.
Right.
And so I think that you have to have great teams. You have to be able to manage your teams, and you have to not ever expect that someone is going to work as hard as you. If that's your expectation, you're going to be disappointed.
Do you consider that part and parcel of an entrepreneurial mindset?
Sure.
right?
Without a
Because I think
doubt.
a lot of people who have their own business are constantly like, does no one else here understand?
Yeah.
And it's not that they don't understand. It's just it's not their baby.
their
They
baby.
don't
Yeah, it's not
own it.
theirs.
They've
No.
never built anything
No.
themselves. They just they
And
don't have that layer of thinking.
Right. And the goal is to get your teams, especially the leaders of those teams, to get there, get close enough.
Right.
And realize that close enough is probably just great. That they don't have to feel the way you do. And that's hard to give that up. It's hard, especially when, as a chef in the kitchen, there's so much that you're trying to control. And so to give up that control, it's hard to do. And so you try to get around and at least pretend that you have it all under control. But it's like you're juggling the balls and the saber dance music is playing,
Right.
You're trying to keep it all together.
Sure.
But yeah, but to be an entrepreneur, you want to grow, and everyone will say this, that they grow because they want to give their teammates, opportunities, because if you don't, they're going to leave you, and it's true. And even if you give them opportunities, eventually they leave you. But
Right.
it's also in this day and age, especially where most of these restaurants, you're not using your money to open up. It's either a developer that's developing a building, they have a great location, they will build it out for you. So those are hard to say no to.
Right.
But then the question is, and I see this very, very frequently, and I'm probably guilty of it too, you try to grow too quickly. And you start saying yes to things you shouldn't say yes to. I think the biggest mistake that we made in trying to grow Witchcraft, which is no longer around, was that because we didn't go out and raise capital, go out to private equity like you would nowadays. I mean, if I were doing that now, it'd be a very different story. We kind of piecemealed it. And because we didn't raise capital, we were just going and trying to find locations that the landlord would contribute as much to the build out as possible. Guess what? Those weren't good locations. Landlords know when they have good locations and know when they don't. And
Yeah,
so,
I used to live between 10th and 11th Avenues, and you guys had I believe you had one, it was in like some old hangar of a space.
yeah, we had it in the old tunnel.
On the
old-
West Side
old club,
Highway.
the tunnel. That was the club, the tunnel.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was one of those cold tunnels.
Yes,
sold
exactly.
Stores. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was our commissary, and we had a store there as
Oh,
well.
your commissary was there.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I didn't know
We
that.
had to maintain a storefront there, but our commissary was there.
Got it. Did you know going in that was not the way to go about it?
No, I didn't. If I knew, I would have done something differently. There was no model. I mean, you think about it, Witchcraft predated Shake Shack.
Oh, yeah.
And so, no, we had no idea. And we had no idea that it was the kind of business that was allowed to lose money until you had 50 stores, and then you can make money, right? So we treated it very differently.
Yeah.
And we also thought that location wasn't that important because, we'll create destinations. Well, you don't create destinations in fast casual. Maybe in fine dining you can, not in fast casual.
Yeah.
You need corner locations, you need high ped counts, pedestrian counts. And a little later on, we actually would sit there looking at a store before we signed a lease with someone with a clicker out front counting how many people walked by. But that was a little too late at that point.
Yeah, I understand. So let's talk about craft.
Sure.
I'll direct people, viewers, listeners, to a 2019 episode of this show when we did a live show at the Bell House.
Yeah.
And we went through all this. And I'm sure you tell the story all the time. You told about your search for the perfect bowl of peas.
Oh, yeah.
But can you just be a little boastful if you like? But when you look at craft, I think craft is such an important restaurant. And as with most important restaurants, I think if you are a little younger, if you came to them later, if you showed up in a city like in New York and it had already been there for a while, it's become like subsumed into the restaurant culture, right? But what do you feel if you don't mind saying, what do you feel the impact of craft has been? What are the ripples that you trace back?
Hard to say. Everybody treated the restaurant like it was some groundbreaking, idea. And I still scratch my head when I think about it because essentially it was a steakhouse model with just much better food, much better sides, much better proteins.
More variety of proteins.
But it was an a la carte restaurant where everything was ordered a la carte and everything was cooked very simply. So if you got a steak, it was just roasted, maybe with some garlic confit and some herbs, that's it. A piece of fish was just simply roasted or braised and some herbs and olive oil, that was it. But if you think about it, it wasn't very different than eating in Tuscany, where you order your contorni, right? It really wasn't. But because you didn't put it under the sort of moniker of Italian, our steakhouse, people just didn't quite get it. And they thought I was trying to do more than I was trying to do. And so it was really interesting is we would try to explain the menu, and it was really confusing to people, and they were, I don't understand, am I going to order the fish and like order the sauce and the vegetable and it's going to come on one plate? No, it wasn't coming on one plate. You weren't going to make a mistake. There was a point in time where I just told the servers, stop explaining it. Drop the menu, walk away. See what happens. Guess what? Everybody figured it out. It was in the trying to explain it that it would confuse people. In fact, when we opened up Craft Steak, which was only about a year later in Las Vegas, because it was a steakhouse, it was exactly the same menu, only more steak items, but there was exactly the same menu, same format. And you drop the menu because it was a steakhouse. People got it. I order my steak, I order my sides. Okay, good. But other than that, I mean, I think it launched in, and you know, I'm on the record of saying I hate sharing small plates.
Yes.
But we started a lot of the sharing craze. But we were sharing
You hate the
large
notion.
plates.
You hate the notion of small plates
Small
that are meant to
plates.
be shared.
Right.
Yeah.
These were large plates to
Right.
be shared. Because every time, I remember when I said that, I was like, well, that's what you do at Kraft. I'm like, no, at Kraft we share large plates. Small plates don't make a whole lot of sense to share.
Well, can I
anyway,
also...
so there was that. I think design-wise, it was pretty cutting edge. I mean, we were the first to use Edison bowls. We were the first to use, the placemats. The what do you call? I forget the name of them now. Anyway, the placemats, wooden tables in fine dining. No tablecloth, things like that. So yeah, I think there was a lot of firsts happening there. Yep.
I mean, it's not wrong, is it, to say that food essentially, maybe you wouldn't use the phrase necessarily, but when you talk about it's large plates to share, I mean, basically it's what everyone would now call a family style situation,
Sure.
right? If I may, I'd love to know what you think about this. Coming out of the 90s, I think that was what you did there, everything you just described, was such radical counter programming, as the TV people would say, right? Because, I mean, Rocco DiSpirito was at Union Pacific, right? That peaked in like the very late 90s. Paul Liebrandt at Atlas, for people who remember that. I mean, I said to Rocco once, I said, I think you're the last chef, you're the last 90s chef. Like that sort of, at that time, people who were kind of celebrated for that sort of super ambitious, super high, technique, high touch food.
We were doing at Gramercy, yeah.
Huh?
But that was what I was doing at Gramercy. So I was already doing that food.
But not family style.
No, not family style, no. So when it came time to do craft, I had to come up with something, and I didn't want to do an Italian restaurant, and so I just thought about food and what I was doing. So I looked at my dishes that I'd done back when I was at Mondrian, and if I would take them back out, season comes, and looking at the menu, I realized I started removing things from the dish. And I thought, well, how, if I look 20 years forward, like, what will this look like? Will it be completely stripped down? And the answer was yes. And I thought, serving things like that family style, I just thought it was, it could have been, eating in Italy where I saw it and said, okay, why are we doing this? Or it could have been just, searching for something to and I know when it finally crystallized, and I told the story before, it was during the Beard Awards, and a bunch of us would get together, like 12 of us the first year, to have a little dinner before going out to the parties. And I remember telling John Schaefer, who was the sous chef at Gramercy, it was springtime, get some baby lamb, I want morels, I want peas, roast the baby lamb, all different parts, just put it on platter, bowl of peas, steamed butter, maybe some chives, morels, butter braised, bowl, that's it. And maybe we probably had some roasted ramps. I said, put those all out family style. I want them on the table when I walk in. And I called them up and told them, okay, I'm coming, because I didn't want to wait around. And I walked in and saw that food on the table and said, that's it. Where can I get this? Where can I pay for this? And that was it. It just made perfect sense to me.
The other thing for me that I think of, well, wait, first I need to ask, so did you think of Gramercy in those terms? Did you think of Gramercy as, not that you would have necessarily said it out loud, but did you see it as kind of a counter offering to some of the excesses? And
well, no,
I mean, things got pretty wacky in the 90s.
It was more counter offer to what I was doing. So I had to do something very different. I couldn't do like that. The food I was doing at Gramercy was very personal. It's hard to label. It wasn't French. It wasn't Italian. I mean, maybe it had an Italian sensibility with French technique, which became American because I'm American.
It was your food.
But it was my food, exactly.
Yeah, that's
it was my
what it
food.
was. That's what
Right.
most chefs would prefer to just say, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Instead of putting a label on it.
Yeah, and so I couldn't do that, and so I had to figure something out, and this was me figuring that out, and it felt natural. It felt good. It also really helped that Marco Canora, who was the first chef de cuisine there, really embraced it. Because I needed someone to really, and in fact the kitchen did, because it felt like we were doing something different. And we were focused on making sure that everything was perfect, that technique was just like solid, and like everything that came in the door was just the best it could be. We were fanatical about it, and it wasn't just me, it was everyone there. They all got it, they all got the mission, and it was fun. It was a little crazy at first, but because there was we're used to plating food. There was no model for it, but it's fun. Looking back on it, it's great. And today we're no longer doing family style.
No, I know. I want to get to that. But something else I think that was interesting when that restaurant opened was when Kraft first opened so there was someone at your level. I mean, you'd had 3 New York Times stars at least twice. Mondrian you had 3.
Mondrian, 3,
and then you had
Gramercy,
3 at Gramercy, right? So. And for people who don't remember, Mondrian was a restaurant in Midtown. But you, I think, if I were going to think family style, I think it was already around. I thought of a place like Carmine's.
Carmine's, yeah.
Yeah. Italian restaurant, not terribly ambitious, fun, big groups. I think the fact that you and your team built this beautiful, very modern room, and served these things. Like I remember, like whipped potatoes or whatever you called it, maybe potato puree.
They were the Robuchon potatoes.
Oh, they were, okay.
Yeah, of course.
But like in a copper pot, right? Things came on very beautiful serveware, right? So I think it was saying, just because it's simple or has the appearance of simplicity, doesn't mean it's not worthy of respect, that it's not worthy of being treated a certain way. You agree with all this?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. We thought that what we were doing, it was going to be fine dining, and what we were doing deserved that. I mean, that was all part of it. But the design, you mentioned the design came organically from the food. So Peter Bentel, who was the architect, he and I had a lot of conversations about the food and the simplicity of the food, and then he took that as a way of saying, okay, let's look at the materials that we're using, and let's keep it minimal, but make sure they're real. We actually tried to do a restaurant without having sheetrock painted walls anywhere, but it was way too expensive. And so, but we had that beautiful leather wall.
Loved it.
That actually served as a purpose because the space was kind of narrow and it linked up the front and the back, so your eye would go around it. And that was actually inspired by Richard Serra, the sculptor.
Sure, that makes sense.
But we wanted wood, we wanted steel, there was bronze, and then there was leather, and there was some glass. The bar itself, the teams that were working on it, so the contractors, we hired a metal worker out of Pennsylvania. The bar top was the table they used in their factory.
Oh, wow.
Because they loved what we were doing so much, we wanted them to make a bar top, and they said, "You'll never get the patina or the years of doing this." So they just gave it to us and cleaned it up, and that became our bar top.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's a lot.
That's so cool.
Yeah. There's and then Stephen Hannock provided some of that great artwork in the back, the triptych of the rockets. So yeah, there was a lot that came together. I mean, the columns, the terracotta columns, they were there. We uncovered them. They were all covered up, and we started stripping them down. We're like, oh, these are gorgeous. Like,
Sure.
Just leave them.
Yeah.
That's what they used to fireproof back then. So there was steel. There's steel underneath there, but to fireproof, they used terracotta.
How difficult was it? There's a line that gets used a lot. I use it a lot. I often use it talking about somebody like what Jonathan Waxman does at Barbuto, right? This idea of, nowhere to hide. The simpler the food is, and I don't just mean, you can cover up an imperfection in appearance with a sauce. I mean, there's less stuff there. You have everything's doing heavy lifting, right?
Yeah.
How was it tough to train up a crew to be able to do that? And has that been anything that's been a challenge over the years, or do you guys, is that just a non-issue?
It wasn't at first. Again, the team was so talented, they understood it. So if you were a really good cook and you trusted your ability, it was much easier. As the years would go on, especially, I would say in the last, since the pandemic, it was much more difficult. But they understood the mission, they embraced it, and so no, it wasn't that difficult. In a way, it was kind of, in a way, it freed them up. They didn't have to worry about plating food so much. But you're right. I mean, I always called it cooking without a safety net. If you fall hard.
Hey everybody, Andrew here. I want to encourage you to check out our presenting sponsor, Mies. Not because they're our sponsor, but because Mies exists to make your kitchen life easier. Mies is the chef-created recipe operating system for culinary professionals. What that means is that Mies is a virtual place to house all of your recipes, and just as importantly, it enables you to derive all kinds of information from them: food costs, allergen data, yield loss, unit conversions, and nutritional breakdowns, and also to scale them up or down, and even to cost them, and to do most of that at the press of a virtual button. Mies is also a teaching tool that empowers you to incorporate how-to photos and videos to illustrate individual recipe steps and techniques, which is especially useful and time-saving for multi-unit organizations. The basic version of Mies is free for the entire culinary industry. Upgrade to premium and let Mies make your entire business more efficient and centralized. Train and onboard team members, manage production, and even process invoices. Seriously, if you work with recipes in the pro kitchen or bar, Mies was built for you and will make your entire restaurant's or company's kitchen life easier. And as a listener of Andrew Talks to Chefs, receive 25 free recipe uploads and breakdowns on your new Mies account by signing up today. Learn more at GetMeez, that's GetMeez.com/Andrew. Simply click through via the link on the episode description for today's show. This change you just alluded to, it's now composed plates. If you look at the menu, I mean, it's a menu, again, when it first came out, it was like rectangular, all the different sections. Now you look at it, and it looks
More conventional.
like a conventional menu,
It is,
right?
yeah.
It's coursed out, it's plated things. There's like a main element, and then supporting things listed.
Right.
What?
We still have a few things that are family style that you can.
Large format.
Yeah,
It's
we
called,
still
right
have
on
that.
the menu.
Yeah.
But what brought about the change? How did you go about instituting it? How much did you personally? You alluded a few minutes ago to like having a team in a restaurant, right? And there's a CDC there. But how involved did you personally get in this adjustment that you guys made?
100%. So we made the change because post-pandemic, people weren't sharing even large format food anymore. And the other problem that we had is most of our items were for 2 to 3 people. And so if you looked at our menu, if you were just going online looking at menus, and you saw a duck at Kraft for $72, you were like, oh, he's just ripping us off because he's a celebrity chef. And it's like, no, this feeds 2 to 3 people. It's actually not that outrageous. And
you're also buying a great duck.
Yeah. And so I started looking at it and saying, this isn't working anymore. It's run its course, and I think I need to make a change. And so it was, I was in the kitchen every night. Sometimes raising my voice a lot more than I have in the last 20 years. And it was tough because I had a very inexperienced kitchen crew. I lost a bunch of my chefs and sous chefs to a restaurant, the Waldorf Astoria. My chef de cuisine, sous chef, butcher, another sous chef, and then another sous chef. So I had a bunch of really inexperienced cooks. I still had my executive chef of the company, Brian Hunt, who's been with me for 14, 15 years now. It took a long time to get these cooks up to speed. These are cooks that, 20 years ago would have not even made it garde manger. But I got to say, I'm really proud of them today. I was in the kitchen the other night and I walked in, and the kitchen was organized. It was clean. Everything looked great. Everything tasted great. They're producing now, and it took a while, and they all, they hung in there, and they're doing great stuff now. So I'm really, but yeah, I was very, very involved, and still am. I mean, I always work on the menus, and so the menus is mine. It's stuff that I felt like making. I was excited about it, and I still spend a good amount of time in the kitchen, mostly at night, trying to shift my hours around. So I'm spending less time in the office and more time in the kitchen. I'm really proud of what we're doing there now.
That's great.
Yeah.
And what are you hearing from guests?
Some of our regulars weren't happy with us, but
That's inevitable, right?
yeah, of course. And we still have some things for them, but the comments on all the sites, the open tables and resis are great. We're getting some of the higher scores we've ever had, and it also it put a lot of stress on the front of house too, because it was all new to them. We had to make some changes, some things that we've, 25 years of doing the same thing, you get into certain habits, and you have to break them all. And it's hard to, it's not so much change that people are adverse to, it's the management of that change. And so it was very difficult to manage during that time. But we got through it. Yeah.
It's interesting to me the way you just, so several years, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago, I think it was 4 years ago, I came and interviewed you in your office. We largely talked about Volata, your Italian restaurant. And at that time, you were telling me that you sometimes came in and worked a station.
Yeah.
I think it was usually the pasta station, if I'm remembering.
Yeah.
You were just talking, I said, how involved were you? You're like, 100%.
Funny story. So
Okay.
we hired this young woman, and I think she was from Thailand, but she'd cooked in a couple of restaurants, and I would work pasta station. But as soon as the last order was done, I'd leave. And one day she was talking to Brian. She said, who's that? The older guy that comes in here? What's his story? He's really good, but he kind of comes in right before service and leaves. He goes, he owns the place.
That's
She
really,
had no idea.
That's so funny.
It was very funny. Yeah.
That reminds me of I used to write about tennis a little bit, and I was covering the U.S. Open one year, and I saw a volunteer show up and say, I'm supposed to go meet Arthur Ashe, who had, first of all, Grand Slam champion.
Right, sure.
Second of all, dead for decades.
Right.
Third of all, stadium named for them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's this person doing? Whatever they're doing, ball kidding or whatever at a tennis tournament. Anyway, but I was going to say you, and then you mentioned what you just said about, getting deeply involved in this transition at Kraft. I'll just put it out there. I'd love to know where it comes from after all these years, but you seem, as much as anybody I know, still very connected to the food in your restaurant. Still, I sense with you, and this is just from afar, but making that change at Kraft, I sense from you a real investment, personal, emotional, I would imagine, investment in your restaurants and wanting them to stay with it, stay with the times, keep in step. And you, I think more than a lot of people, as a chef, I don't think you've ever changed that much, even with the TV show and everything. Anybody who lives in New York around the industry knows that. But I think this goes beyond that. I think you hang in with things and really want them to endure in a vital way for as long as possible. I just would love for you to comment on that, because it seems like it's more than business to you.
I think restaurants need to be more than business, and I think could be a problem right now. A lot of what you see, it's the same menu, same things, and it's just become a business. And there's a lot of other things you can do business-wise that would probably bring you a lot more financial return than restaurants
And sleep,
especially right now. But my feeling is, if you're going to do something, do it right. And it's also part of it is I'll be honest, is just trying to stay relevant. I'm 63 years old. I've been doing this for almost 50 years, believe it or not. Yes, I started when I was very young. And it's trying to make sure that I'm staying relevant. And, in this day and age, especially with the way media is, I think nationally and in New York, it's like they don't want to talk about someone who's been around for 25 years. They want to talk about the new shiny thing, and that's it. And so it's very, very hard to cut through all the noise. And I think as our regulars have aged out and they moved to Palm Beach or wherever they left, it's hard to find the 30-year-olds who are coming to craft.
Yeah.
And so trying to stay relevant and trying to make sure the food stays relevant and it's hard. It's hard to do.
That's a great segue to some other stuff I want to talk about. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. This episode of Andrew Talks to Chefs was filmed at the iconic Gage and Toner restaurant in beautiful downtown Brooklyn. Situated for more than 125 years just across the Brooklyn Bridge from Manhattan and just steps from several major subway lines, Gage and Toner mingles a transporting landmark setting with contemporary standards of food and hospitality. Gage and Toner's current chapter began in 2021 when the restaurant was reopened by a trio of successful Brooklyn restaurateurs following a lovingly performed restoration. In addition to the expansive chandelier downstairs dining room, the second floor is home to the Sunken Harbor Club, Gage and Toner's very own tropical cocktail bar, and to two conjoined private spaces decorated to resemble a Victorian townhome. We film in one of those. Whether for any occasion dining, a drink or bite at the walk-in-only bar, or a private event, Gage and Toner looks forward to hosting you. For more information and/or to reserve your table today, visit the link in our episode description for today's show at andrewtalkstochefs.com or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, here you go. Thank you. So, you were just alluding to, well, it's a word I use all the time, the fickleness of the public, right? When even, I would say definitely when Gramercy opened in 94, it still existed, right? There was the expectation, you open a great restaurant, you're going to have a certain amount of loyalty, perhaps generational, if you did it right. There were also fewer restaurants of note at that time. No?
No, yes, probably. Yes, there were fewer restaurants.
There was less
fewer seats.
competition.
There was less competition. There was also no social media.
Right.
And so there were gatekeepers, though, people that people listened to and trusted, mostly, traditional media, but also other people who weren't even media. People like Sheila Lukens, for instance, was a gatekeeper. If Sheila said your restaurant was good, people paid attention.
Sheila was one half of the Silver Palette.
Right,
Yeah.
right. It was also a very different time when the restaurant reviewers and restaurant writers and food writers didn't hang out with chefs. They kept arm's length.
Yes.
And then there were people who had newsletters like Seymour Britchke and people like that, and they Tim Zagat started as a newsletter, right?
Yeah.
And so there was a fewer people, and they weren't searching for clicks. They wanted people to buy their newsletter, but they weren't searching for clicks. And so they were doing, I think, it was more pure journalism versus what the media's turned into today. And it's fine. If that's the business model for media, that's fine. But let's not pretend that it's anything other than that.
Yeah, well, you alluded, I'll mention it in the intro because I couldn't remember exactly who it was, but as we sit here today, there was something that was making the rounds, certainly on Instagram, talking about how the media focus on new restaurants is really doing a disservice to established restaurants, to even, I don't think the person who wrote it used this word, classic restaurants, places that are deserving of a certain amount of loyalty and support. Even me, as someone who, I don't really cover the industry. I don't write I don't have like a column, but tries to stay current. It's almost impossible, and if you want to actually have been to every place that people are maybe possibly talking about, it's nuts. And the geography of it is much, it's not just Manhattan. It's like Queens and Brooklyn.
Which is
and
exactly why I hate the lists. Because you're going to tell the best burger in the United States. You've eaten them all? Really? This is why I don't vote for the beer awards anymore. Because I don't go to the restaurants, and so I feel that if I'm going to vote, and I'm a winner, so I'm a voter, but I would have to go to those restaurants. I don't feel like my opinion is valid.
This to me is one of the great problems with
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends, as you do, in the foundation.
Yeah.
But to me, what is an award that the people who are voting haven't been to you or the other nominees?
No.
Like, what does it mean? And what does it mean if you can campaign successfully for an award? Like, maybe it means you're the best campaigner.
Yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily. I just feel like what is that award? I don't mean. Oh, I'm happy. The best I ever heard it put was Anthony Bourdain said, "I'm happy for my friends who win, and I think chefs deserve a party every year." And then he proceeded to take a crowbar to everything else about the awards, right?
Yeah.
But that's kind of how I feel. I go to Chicago. This is my 9th year now with this show. I've never submitted it for consideration. I just opt out, and I just go and enjoy the parties, But
I don't even do that anymore. My feeling is this: if I'm not nominated, I'm not going. It's like the
well-
Oscars. You don't show up at the Oscars if you don't get nominated if you're an actor.
I mean, there was a time, I was there for it, when it was really like the Oscars of food, and everybody, Wolfgang Puck was walking around, everybody, and then that started to eventually become, as you just, if I'm nominated, I'll be there. If they ask me to present.
If it were in New York, maybe it's not that big of a lift, but to get on a plane and do what? Hang around and drink for 3 nights in a row? I can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
But it's still, I like what they do. I do like that they have a different mission, but it's their mission, and that's fine. But let's understand that.
Yeah.
But same thing goes with Michelin. Like, I'm not asking that the reviewers, not remain anonymous. That's fine. I want to know how many there are. That's all I want to know. Because if they tell me there's 3, I'm going to say, how do you cover New York City with 3 reviewers? Mm-hmm. Like, you can't.
They won't even cough up a number?
No.
Wow.
No. And it's like all these things. It's all,
Yeah.
I mean, a very famous New York chef, after winning the top 50 for like 3 or 4 years in a row and not going to the party, was told, if you don't come to the party, you're off the list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well.
He went to the party.
Yeah, sure. So what do you think we do about this? I mean, I hear this from so many people. I remember when I wrote, I'm not trying to plug my book, but when I was writing Chefs, Drugs, and Rock and Roll, and I went to interview Thomas Keller, the first thing he said to me was, "I'm really glad you're writing this book, because I've been telling Dana Cowan, who at the time was the editor of Food and Wine magazine, that they need to do best old chefs instead of just best new chefs, right? To keep so people know who we all are."
Well, see, I think the Beard Awards, what they should have had is best chef, because I understand why once you won your category, you couldn't get nominated, but they should have had another category that was just best chef of that year. And it didn't matter how many years in a row you won it. If you were doing something special that year, you were the best in the country, you should win it.
Well,
But
that's
they
the
wouldn't do that.
Outstanding Chef Award, right?
No. Once you win your category,
No, I'm saying you can't re-win that,
can't
but
re-
it would be that
you have to go
award.
10 years before
Right.
you can at least that's what it used to be.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Wolf was the first one to get it twice,
Did he?
I think.
I don't think anybody has.
Yeah,
I could be wrong. Okay.
I think so. I think he won it the very first year. And funny, I love this story. I can say it because it was in the book. But he left his award at an after party. This is what people thought
he
of
did.
awards the first year.
Of course
And
he
he
did.
like never, he
Never
just
found
like
it.
never found it. Didn't really care. But are there too many restaurants? I'll tell you something I noticed years ago. I was on the homepage of Eater New York, and they had the tiles of all the articles, and one of them said something to the effect of 28 places you need to try this fall. 28 new places. And then right under it was a tile, 27 noteworthy closings. And I'm like, I screen grabbed it. It's probably still on my Mac. But I sent it to people, and I was like, do the math. If there's 28 places people are saying you need to try, that's 28 places that someone isn't going to on a given night, that are already there, that have already. And the word that I think it's so obvious once I heard it, but Amanda Cohen said to me once, people have made restaurants disposable.
Yes.
And
There's no brand loyalty.
I think that's the word.
Yeah, very
I think
low.
that's the word. They treat them like movies.
Right, but also you see the way people order. They come in, they order the entire menu, they want to eat it all and never come back. And they put it all in the center of the table and eat. And it's like, you just turn the restaurant into a buffet, but okay. If that's what you want. I mean, literally, there's a tuna tartare with sea urchin vinaigrette, and then there's a gnocchi with gorgonzola, and you want them on the same plate? And then you're going to say you didn't like the food. Got it. It's crazy what restaurants have turned into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, are you an optimist or a pessimist? I mean, how does this ever change?
I don't know. I'm happy I'm towards the end of my career than the beginning of it, to tell you the truth.
I feel that way about
Yeah.
the timeline that I'm living in, just in terms of the planet and the, the human race.
Well, yes, that too.
Like, I'm glad,
I think the
I'm glad I'm
restaurant-
not walking into this movie right now.
Yeah. Well, I feel bad for my kids. You know.
Yeah, same.
They've got to navigate this world that
Same.
we're completely screwing up.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. There's still, you know, something's got to give. What bothers me more than anything, you go to these restaurants that are so hyped, and you go there and it's like, really, it's good, but what's all this hype about? Yeah. And then recently, I was in Fort Lauderdale. Emeril Lagasse does a fishing tournament every year for his foundation, and we're staying at this resort called 66 or something like that, something 66. And it's a beautiful resort. It was an old resort that they shut down, remodeled. And so went to the signature restaurant, not expecting anything. It was really good. But it was because I didn't expect a thing.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, it's a resort restaurant, but we're staying at the resort, and I got to wake up early, so fine, let's just go here. And we were with a fairly large party, and the food was fantastic. Pier 66. And but again, it wasn't. Now, if it was all of a sudden hyped up, and it was like the buzz, and you had to go, and then I would have been like, okay.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's the setting of the expectations that are I think, is very hard to live up to. And I think very, very often I'm disappointed by the hype. Yeah.
I don't know where this story is going to be in a week or two when I air this, because it's been like morphing and mutating every day, mostly on social media, although I expect there are going to be big stories coming. But there's a kind of a controversy going on that's around Noma, spurred by some former employees. Can we talk about that for a second? There is a former employee of the restaurant by the name of Jason Ignacio White, who was part of the fermentation team, key member of the fermentation team, who I interviewed years ago, but none of this, of course, ever came up. But he has taken to Instagram. He's using the occasion of Noma's coming residency in Los Angeles, and he has said, I'm not going to keep quiet anymore. I'm going to share all these terrible stories, and people are coming out of the woodwork. I mean, people from multiple eras of the restaurant, including right now, people who are there now writing him anonymously. He's posted, I did a count the other day, in his archived or highlights of his stories. He has a special Noma abuse one. There were, a couple days ago, there were 90-something entries there, and many of them were just him reposting things that were sent to him. You know, I have no knowledge of it. I haven't called people I know who might. But there's that whole piece. But then the thing that seems to have kind of risen up out of it now, again, mostly on Instagram, although I'm sure there will be articles, is it's not specific to that restaurant. It's now, because some of the issues were around the whole stagiaire program, and then that's now become, staging is a terrible thing. You know, nobody should ever work for below whatever or for no money. And some people take it to the degree of saying this is all remnants of, you know, white supremacy and slavery, and there's a whole spectrum of emotions going on, right? Any piece of this that you have an opinion on, I would be interested in hearing it and discussing it.
Sure. I mean, the issue of stagiaire, because they're two separate things.
100%.
There's abuse is abuse, and you know.
And it's not unique to stages.
It's not unique to stages.
Yeah.
It's not unique. It's not unique to the restaurant industry either.
Sure.
So let's take stagiaire. I did two stagiaires. One in Gascony with Ariane Degan's father.
Sure.
And another one for Michel Bras. And I had others planned that I couldn't go because my father died actually. And I saved my money when I worked because I knew I wanted to go stage somewhere. So I put some money away. I didn't have wealthy parents. They didn't give me any money to go do a stage. They weren't paying for my apartments. They weren't, none of that stuff. So this idea that stagiaires are only for wealthy people who can afford it, I think I ended up, I got a $99 flight to Brussels on People's Express.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that was
and,
one of those. What they had a name for them.
People's Express.
No, but there was a class of airline. There were
don't-
like 2 or 3 of them. Yeah.
Low rate.
This made Spirit Airlines look like the MGM.
Yeah, well,
Grant.
it turned
Yeah.
into Continental, and then Continental, was bought by United. But People's Express, and then I got a train to Gascony from Brussels. I stayed in the hotel because there was a hotel attached to the restaurant, unless the hotel was booked, and then I had to go pack my bags and go to some really dump down the road that I stayed in. Most of my meals were in the restaurant, and whatever money I had, I think I ended up going there with like $500, and was careful how I spent the money, and got through. Maxed out some credit cards, and American Express, as soon as I got home, took them away from me. So I did my stage, and I worked for free, because I wanted the experience, and it was worth it. It was worth the trade-off. I don't think, like, if you're a doctor and you're an intern, like, you're not getting paid for the hours that you're putting in. You're doing minimum 80 hours a week. No one's paying you by the hour. So it was for the experience, and so that was entirely up to me. If you want to go and do a stagiaire, if you want to save money, you want to do that, I think you can. I think you should, and that's fine. The abuse thing is different. What I'm finding really interesting is, I went to Noma once, and I remember walking in, and I thought it was me because I was a chef coming in. Then I found that every single person got this treatment. The entire team came out and said hi to you, and they were really nice.
Yes, same.
And really engaging.
Same.
And I'm thinking to myself, wow, something special here. And then to find out that, if it's true, that this abuse was going on, and the disconnect between how the employees seem to be versus the stories of abuse, just to me, it's hard to understand how that happens. It's hard to get people that motivated if there's clear and present abuse going on. But there's no excuse for it, but it happens because this drive to be the best, this drive to be the best in the world. It just think about this. So we just watched the Olympics, and if you look at some of these athletes and you look at what they had to do to be the best, how they had to push themselves, and pretty much they have no social life. To be an Olympic athlete, you are waking up early in the morning, you're working out, you're resting, you have another weight workout, and then you go back in and it's another, and it's constant, it's all you do, and push yourself through. Now, but that's you, and you're making that decision to do that to yourself. But now think about an organization, and you're going to push yourself that hard, because you could say that the putting yourself through it is almost abusive to your body. But to be that good, you almost have to punish yourself to do that. And a lot of the athletes now are starting to talk about it more of a work balance. And I'm a swimmer. Caleb Dressel was one of the fastest swimmers ever in the world. He has a family now, and he's cut down his work schedule. He didn't make the Olympic team. And this is arguably the fastest swimmer in the world.
Right.
But he cut back because he wanted to have more of a balance. But to be that great, if you're, again, as an individual pushing yourself, that's on you. Maybe some of your family members suffer, but most of these kids are young and they don't have families yet. But it's a very different story now to create an organization where you're going to push yourself and everyone else around you that hard that it becomes abusive. That's a problem. But is that what it takes to be the best? It definitely takes what it to abuse yourself. When I say abuse yourself, you're putting it's a lot of pain. That's a lot of that you're going through.
You're pushing.
Yeah, you're pushing.
You're
to do that
pushing
to
yourself to
yourself
the
is one
max.
thing. To do that to other people
Yeah.
that are working for you is a different thing. And so it's really hard. I understand the drive. I don't understand how, if it's almost like systematic abuse.
Yeah.
But it seems like there was this mental game going on too, not just this physical abuse, mental abuse, but I don't know. It's.
I mean, the striking thing is the number. It's the number of similar accounts of a certain set type of abuse or harassment across different years, and certain incidents, specific incidents, recalled by multiple people now, and that's. I mean, again, I'm not a judge and jury, but it's hard to see how at least some part of this is.
But here's the flip side of that. I don't recall hearing this about Ferran. Now, I never made it to his restaurant, but I don't recall ever hearing that about him. And he was the best for a long time too, right? And so, it's.
But you're not saying you didn't hear it and he was doing it. You're implying that he wasn't.
Oh yeah, at this
culture
point,
there was not.
I think you would have heard it.
You would have. Right. I agree with that.
Right.
Yeah. Well, the best line anyone ever said to me about this was Eric Ripera once said. I said, there's a lot of stress in a kitchen, and he goes, well, Andrew, airline pilots are responsible for sometimes a couple hundred lives. And when was the last time you heard one of them scream during the flight? That's hard to argue with.
Right, but they're who are they going to scream at? The co-pilot? Like they're behind closed doors. You'll never hear it.
Yeah,
and they make it. They may. But no. But I understand what he's saying. But I actually think a lot of it comes down to it's just the kitchens. It's the way that people were taught. I mean, I remember working in France and hearing a chef go off on someone and looking at it and go, I see what's happening here. You have a kid in the kitchen who doesn't want to be here. Right? He didn't choose this career. He couldn't go on, any further on for his education. So his dad grabbed him and said, "Teach my son the trade." Right? And they didn't want to be there, so they got yelled at a lot. There's this inability to communicate, and so was everything done by force. Right? And you look at it and just go, "Is this necessary?" That said, listen, I've certainly raised my voice in the kitchen. I've certainly been demanding. I don't think I was, I don't think borderline on abuse.
Or person.
Right.
It starts to get personal. That to
Right.
me is a
Right.
big line.
Yeah,
Obviously,
never make it
physical is a
personal.
bigger line.
Yeah.
But
I've never laid hands on.
yeah, but when you start
I know
calling
that.
people an idiot or you're useless, you'll never be any. That's
Yeah, but we celebrate it on TV, don't we?
yeah, not on your show.
No.
A quick note of thanks to one of our promotional partners, S.Pellegrino Sparkling Natural Mineral Water. For the past 125 years, S.Pellegrino has supported the art of fine dining in all of its ever-changing forms and nurtured the next generation of chefs through resources and mentorship. To learn more, visit sanpellegrino.com. A couple of things about this. In terms of the stuff, well, first of all, the thing you just said about pushing yourself, right? Because I think this is something that's, I think it's out of fashion in some regards, and I think younger people who are listening should hear this, but I believe there is a time in life, and it might be your whole life and career, but there's certainly a time, I believe, when you're younger, if there's something you want that is competitive, that is difficult, there is a time to push. There is a time possibly to not get the 8 hours of sleep we're all increasingly told we need. I would not be sitting here with you. I did a lot of work in between. I was trying to be a screenwriter. I was a PR guy. One of my clients was Alfred Portali at Gotham Bar and Grill. He had a draft of his first cookbook that he wasn't happy with. There wasn't much budget. He asked me if I thought I could save the book, and I took it on. And we had 8 weeks, and I re-interviewed him on everything in the book and rewrote the book on nights and weekends while working at this PR firm. And it was right across the street from the second Equinox, the one around the corner from your restaurant. And there were nights where I would work a full day at the office, stay at my desk all night, go shower at Equinox, and then come back and work a full day on no sleep, right? But that gave me my career, that book, right? And I have no regrets. It was hard. Yeah. Even at 28, whatever I was, that was a serious push.
Right.
But that was the right thing for me to do.
Right, but can you imagine if you had a team of writers, like 20 people, and they were all young, and you pushed them and said, you can't go to sleep? That'd be abusive.
No, I agree with that, but I'm saying you also were talking about like individuals, right?
Yeah.
Like the Olympic athlete comparison.
Yeah. I mean, but it's like, in this day and age, could Bobby Knight coach a college basketball team?
No.
No. And do you have to? I mean, look at, I hate Duke because I'm a North Carolina fan, but John Shire, like, you don't see him. I'm sure he raises his voice, but I don't get a sense that John Shire would throw a chair at someone.
Right.
And be that abusive.
Yeah.
And that's the difference.
Yeah.
You still can get a lot out of people without being abusive.
Yes.
Without getting in someone's face.
Yeah.
This isn't the military. And this idea that it can be like that is just quite frankly, I don't think it's a place for the military, but I've never been there, so it's hard for me to comment. But you can get a lot out of people. You can be demanding, you can be exacting, you can drive people. The second it becomes personal, if you you put hands on someone,
Game over.
Game over.
Yeah.
If it becomes personal, where you're an idiot, it just crosses a line.
Yeah.
And for me, I find myself if I start getting upset, getting to the point where I think I'm going to lose it, I just walk out of the kitchen.
Yeah, well,
I
it's
just
probably smart.
Just go upstairs and
Yeah.
just take a walk and
Yeah,
just
yeah.
get out of here. But there has to be like, what's the goal? What are you trying to do? Is it worth it? This is why I think, look at the book that Bernard Wazot wrote. Chasing Stars. Right? It was his book, right? He invented.
No. I think he was the perfectionist.
No, he ended up killing himself.
He was the subject of The Perfectionist.
I think it was called Chasing Stars. Anyway,
Okay.
I could be wrong. But this idea that you're going to drive yourself that hard, where he was so afraid of losing a star, he'd rather kill himself than lose the star. I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
Think about what the conditioning to get there, and how then abusive you probably are to people around you, because you are that singularly focused on this thing that you feel without it you're less. You're less than you're. And so, and I think that's kind of where we're at right now. We're all, I mean, quite frankly, I don't care if I ever get a Michelin star. I really don't. I had one at one time, and they decided I shouldn't have one, and I don't really care to get. I mean, I certainly don't want to go and say, I'm going to start treating staff and be abusive because I'm after something. Like, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
It's not worth it.
Yeah.
And I know what it brings. You get a Michelin star. I mean, my restaurant's not very busy right now. I get a Michelin star, it'd probably be busy. Is it worth abusing people for that? I'd rather. I don't care about perfection. Mm-hmm. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah. Question for
Sorry.
you about the whole staging thing, because this is where I've always thought. It's interesting, David Nafeld, who's a really good chef
I saw him
in San
I saw him
Francisco.
a couple weeks ago.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I was at the Super Bowl, so I stopped in.
Really good friend of mine. I love David. He did a thing about this on Instagram the other day, a video, and he was saying, there is. Well, first of all, he was pointing out the nuance of this whole subject, which people don't seem to have an appreciation for. But second of all, he was saying, there is a way to look at it where a restaurant that takes on a stage is actually being generous with their time.
Yeah.
Because you come in there, you're there to learn their tricks, their secrets, right? And they're going to give you that time. Yeah. But why would they pay for that? The thing that I have always said, and no one's even written to me or DM'd me or called me out on it, but I'll say it again. I'd love your take on it. If you go to culinary school, a top culinary school, right? That's tens of thousands of dollars a year. And probably that's debt you're going to take on. Mm-hmm. Okay. What I don't understand is, if I'm a young person, I don't come from a family of means, I want to be a chef, I don't want to take on all this debt. So you know what? I'm going to couch surf, I'm going to go work for free, and when I come in the door, I don't have much value to these people, but they're going to teach me my craft.
Yep.
Right? I don't see why that is not a respected, viable, non-criticized option to going to culinary school. Because they will, if you go to somewhere and you leave a marketable cook, right? You've gotten the better end of that deal.
Yeah, okay. But here's what's even worse. Because I agree with you. In New York, we can't take stagiaires.
Yeah.
You got to pay them. If a kid came to me and said, I want to learn everything I can, pay me minimum wage, I would. Right? I think you should get paid. And so let's just say, okay, here's the baseline. It's going to be minimum wage. All right, now cooks are making $24, $25 an hour. But if someone came in and said, pay me minimum, which I think is 16 and change right now, and I want to learn. But I want to learn. You're not going to stick me in the corner and have me peel potatoes. I really want to learn.
For 3 months.
No, a year. You don't learn anything in 3 months. It's all repetition. Oh, peel
No, I
potatoes
mean,
for 3 months. Yes.
yeah.
And that's just it. You go to culinary school, you're going to come out, it costs like 50 grand a year, 60 grand a year to go to culinary school. And what do you learn? You get a pretty good idea of how to cook, but you learn through repetition. And so you spend a week in the Italian kitchen and you know Italian food? No, you don't. You know nothing. It's all through repetition. So you got to come in, you got to do your reps, you got to spend the time. And I wish there was a more structured apprenticeship system, because then it would work. In fact, I tried to set one up, try to get a few restaurants or chefs who were friends of mine and saying, okay, here's the deal. We'll bring people in, they'll work for me for a year, and then I'll call Eric Repair, I'll work for Eric for a year, and then they'll go work for Alfred Portali for a year. 3 years, they're gonna be really good. If we can create this system, a lot of these kids wouldn't have to go to culinary school and spend that kind of money.
Yeah, well, that's the restaurant's end of the deal, right?
Right.
Like, is that you're not going to just use them as free labor. You're going to
Right.
make an effort, even
Right.
if that isn't formalized the way you just described
Right.
it, that you are going to make an effort to move people through different areas. They're going to learn different skills.
Right. But
That's the trade-off.
Unless it's a stagiaire that's extra, if you're paying someone, you're gonna put them in the system. Like they have to learn, or else what's the point of having them? If you start them in prep or you start them in garde manger,
Yeah.
and then you move them to the hotline and work around the hotline in every station, within a year you can learn a lot if you apply yourself.
Yeah.
So I wish there were more of a structured system to do that. We just don't have that here.
Yeah.
I mean, you need like a guild. You need and we just don't have that kind of system anymore.
Yeah.
For anything. I think it would be a much better alternative. And quite frankly, I think after 2 years, which is I guess the average culinary school, I think you'd be a better cook. You'd know a lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to leave it there. Congratulations on the milestone.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming in.
Yeah, sure, of
I know
course.
you have a lot of people who'd like to be sitting with you doing
Oh,
interviews.
no, that's fine.
So,
Yeah, that's fine.
I appreciate you doing it again.
It doesn't, our day after our snow, so it's kind of nice to get out and it's beautiful day out there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of nice. But anyway,
Thank
yeah,
you very
pleasure.
much.
Yeah.
And that is our show for today. Again, our great thanks to Tom Colicchio for joining us. If you live in New York City or find yourself visiting, go check out Craft Restaurant. And again, our huge congratulations on Craft's 25th anniversary. Please go check out Mies, the recipe operating system for culinary professionals, at getmies.com/Andrew. This episode was produced and hosted by me, Andrew Friedman, produced, edited, and mixed by Rod Alleyne, and our videographer was Edison Koo. And thanks to Gage and Tollner for providing our location. If you live in New York City or find yourself visiting, please go check out Gage and Tollner and its upstairs bar, the Sunken Harbor Club. Links to that on the episode description for today's show. And our thanks, as always, to S.Pellegrino for their longstanding support of the pod. If you'd like to support us, we ask that you do that by telling a friend about the show, posting about the show on social media, and or rating and or reviewing us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And if you are now watching us on YouTube, please be sure to like and subscribe. Our thanks, as always, to After School Special for our music. Please check out their album, Double Barrel, Single Entendre on iTunes. Please follow us on Instagram and also on TikTok. @Chef Podcast is the handle on both platforms. Thank you for listening, and we will be back soon with another episode of Andrew Talks to Chefs.